Alright, so let's work on our value as element page. And you can get to that page by inside your document, coming over here to the panel on the right, clicking on pages, and coming down to page 5 and double clicking it. Now this one shouldn't take as long because we're not actually going to be placing any elements. We're just going to be changing their value. And so you probably remember from the lesson, let me close this out here, that value is going to deal with the light or darkness of an element. So for example, this up here at the top, this has a very low value. It's very dark. As opposed to the circle, which has a very high value, which makes it a little bit lighter. So low, darker, high, lighter. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and affect the value of some of these elements. And remember, this is what we are looking for inside of our finished document. And all the tips that you need are also inside the student guide. Alright, let's move that over here to the side. So the first thing that we want to do is I'm going to take my zoom tool down here. I'm going to click and drag around the element that I want to affect, which is the headline. Now in this particular case, we're going to be affecting text, but only a portion of the text. So tell you what, let's go and take our selection tool first and click on the text box. So as you can see, this is one text box. And tell you, to make it a little bit easier to see, let's go and change our view. Right now I'm in preview mode because sometimes all those lines can be a bit irritating to work with, but I'm going to come up here to view, drop down to screen mode and go to normal. Normal is going to show me the bounding boxes of all of our elements as well as the margins or any guides that we may have drawn. So as you can see, the word value element is basically all inside one text box, but we just want to affect a portion of this text. So right now, if we were to change the color with this box selected, it would apply to everything. So we're going to take our text selection tool or type tool, and we're going to basically click inside the box and highlight only the portion of the text that we want to affect. And according to our guide, it's basically lament. So we're going to click and highlight that text, go over to our swatches panel, make sure that we have the text selected, make sure that we're affecting the fill, and currently it should be set to black, and we're going to basically change it to 30% black. There we go. I'm going to deselect that by coming over to my selection tool and then clicking off to the side there. Alright, now as far as the word as and, according to our guide, both of these need to be set to 75% black. And you can see that both of these sit inside a single text box, and so with that, let's just do them at one time. So click on that text box, come over here to your swatches, make sure that you have the T selected. Click on the T. Again, we're going to be applying it to the fill with the black. Let's change it to 75. Again, because we have the entire text box selected, any change that we make is going to apply it to anything inside that box. All right, so if we close it out, that looks good. That's already set. Very good. Let's scroll down just a bit. Now, in this particular case, notice how we've got this text that says, "Look at me more." But right now it's very difficult to read, mainly because both of these have a value that's very, very similar. There's not enough contrast. So whenever we're working with value, we want to make sure that we have enough contrast so that things stand out that we need to have stand out. And the only way that we can do that is a couple things. If you've got a light background, then you typically want to have darker text. Or in the case that we're going to be doing is we want to have a dark background with very light text. So let's select the background circle, click on it, and let's come over to our swatches panel, and we're going to affect the fill, so click on the fill color. Right now it's set to 30% black, just simply change that to 100. And I clicked on the drop down over here. I'm just going to make the slider. Alright. Now this alone does look better, however we can make this look at me pop even more by making it white. There is no greater contrast than white on black, or black on white. So with that, select your text box, and again, because we're going to be affecting all the text within inside of it, we only need to select the text box. Go to your swatches panel, click on the T, click on paper, make sure you're applying it to the fill. Okay, and click off to the side. Looks good. Now, the only other thing that we really need to do with this circle is notice what's happening to the text behind it. You can't read it because the circle is sitting on top of it. So what we're going to do is similar to what we did in the previous video, is we're going to apply a text wrap. So I'm going to close out my swatches panel over here real quick. And I'm going to select the circle because I want to apply a text wrap to the circle. This means if this has the wrap, all the text is going to flow around this particular shape. So with the circle selected, come up to Window, come down to Text Wrap. It'll bring up a floating panel. And in this particular one, I want you to select Wrap Around the Object Shape, which is this one right here. We click on that, and notice how we have this, how the text suddenly flows around that outer shape. Now, just to be safe, and if yours is not set this way, right here in the for the measurement, this is what's going to determine the amount of space that the text sits from the actual shape. You kind of see this barrier right there. That's being controlled by this number right here. So for example, if I were to type in 0.25, notice how we get this 1/4 inch space between the shape and the text. For our purposes, go ahead and put it at 0.125. Perfect. And because it's a circle, you notice it's applying that same number all around it. If this were an actual rectangle, you could actually adjust the space to be different around each side. All right, so that looks great. So let's scroll down here to the bottom. And let's get rid of this for now because we don't need it. Now in this particular case, we've also got a large circle here, but notice how it's a very dark color. And dark text does not sit well on another object that's also of dark value. And because we don't have enough contrast, it makes it very difficult to read these items, especially if we were to print this out on a black and white sheet of paper. So what we want to do is we want to make this background lighter so that it does not interfere with the reading of this text. So click on the circle, go into your swatches panel. In this particular case, it's 80%. It still needs to be lighter. So we're going to drop it all the way down to 10 for right now and hit enter. And let's close it out just to kind of see. So now notice how easily the text can be read sitting on top of that lighter shape. So again, whenever you're working with value, a good principle to keep in mind is dark background, lighter text. Dark text, lighter background. All right, so the next bit is right here. Look at me less. So right now, because again, notice how it's solid black on a white background, it's very easy to read. It's going to grab attention. So what we're saying by look at me less is we want to push this further back in the background by giving it a softer or a higher value. So select the text box, again, because we want to affect all the text inside of it. Open up your swatches panel. Make sure that you have the T selected. And for the black, let's go ahead and make this 30% it says. There you go. So again, lighter values will typically push itself into the background, especially if you have a light background to begin with. So as this text becomes lighter, its value becomes very similar to what's behind it. So it allows us to draw less attention to it. And for the squares down here at the bottom, this is going to be pretty simple. For each one of these, basically we're going to create a shade. So this is 100% black for all of these. And again, to kind of show you how value can create movement is on a page, if you go from a light to a dark, you can sort of create this sort of nice flow of things. So all we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these squares and simply change their value to a certain percentage. So we're going to have the right be at 100%, and we're going to start here on the left, and inside of our swatches panel, our tint, it's going to start at 10. Again, this is just to get you practice working with adjusting the tints of certain colors. This is going to be important, especially once we start getting into working with Pantone colors going forward. So with that, click your next square, make it 20%, and just keep going down the line by increasing it 10% along the way. So your fourth square will be at 40%. Again, this will be at 50, then 60, 70, 80, and then 90. Again, our last one has already been set at 100%. Now, something I would also tell you to do if you have access to a printer at home is print this particular page out on black and white. And I want you to see, how far down can you go before it becomes unreadable. And the reason I say that is most printers don't normally like you going below 20%. Most of the printers I worked with, now keep in mind this was back in the day, and whenever we were working with a printing press, 30% was about as light as they would allow us to go. Some of our higher end printers, though, would allow us to go down to 20%, which is still pretty light. And so anytime that you're working with value, one that's always a good question to ask the printer is, how light can I go for certain colors? And they'll normally tell you, but 20% is probably about the lightest I've ever gone. But just, again, it's something to think about. All right, so with that, let's do Control 0 to do a fit to page. Let's come up here to View, go to our screen mode, and let's put it back in Preview. All right, looks very good.